So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, wherever in the world you happen to be. My name is Carmen Mazzara, and I serve as Executive Director of your Coalition for American Public Diplomacy and Leadership. Capital is very excited to kick off 2026 with this important conversation, looking at how BridgeUSA alumni and participants can really best celebrate and market their experience to employers. We have some wonderful recruiters here today, both from the intergovernmental side, from the World Bank Group, as well as from the private sector at Accenture, to really talk about how you and your students can really celebrate and share what they learn on these programs on the professional skills side, as well as through some of those softer, more interpersonal skills. A recording of this session will be available through Capital's YouTube page just as soon as I can get it up on the technical side. And then Capital members will have access to our usual summary and list of takeaways through the member portal afterwards. As a quick reminder to our Capital members, you should have received your renewal information a few weeks ago, so we really hope that you will stay a part of our community and continue to be able to access these events and all of the Capital resources throughout the year. If you do have technical issues as we go, please feel free to send me a quick chat directly. And if you have questions for our amazing speakers, you can put those in the public chat as well, and we'll have a chance to respond as best we can in real time. So with that, let's jump in and get in underway. I very much want to, yeah, I'm very excited, there we go, to celebrate. I'm so excited I can't talk. Our speakers with you. To start, we have Dustin Clinton, who is a talent delivery lead for Accenture, where he oversees their early career and campus recruiting. In this role, he builds partnerships with business leaders and recruiting teams to shape hiring strategies, strengthen university relationships, and fill all of those critical analyst and consulting roles. Prior to this, where I got to know him was when he was a graduate student recruiter at the University of California, San Diego. And prior to that, he was an international exchange participant teaching English overseas and also was pursuing his graduate degree in international affairs. So we're very glad to have Dustin here. It's very early where he is, so I know he's caffeinated and ready to go and share all of his wisdom with us. I'm also very happy to welcome Shuo Xing, who is a human resources officer and recruitment specialist at the International Finance Corporation, which many of you know is part of the World Bank Group. There, she leads the talent acquisition, particularly out of the Latin America and Caribbean region, working closely with hiring managers and HR business partners to enhance recruitment efficiency, the candidate experience, and all of those wonderful workplace planning outcomes. Prior to that, she spent 8 years in Spain as a talent and career development specialist with the IE Business School in Madrid, working particularly with millennials as well as executive professionals as they pursued their careers in international development and business. She began her career, and I love this, in the International Relations Department for the Beijing Olympic Games Organizing Committee. She also worked with the Spanish and Peruvian embassies in China, and she also has lots of international lived experience in Beijing and Madrid and Bogota and Quito and DC. Being fluent in Chinese, Spanish, and English, Shuo brings such a wonderful global perspective to our conversation today. So as you all can see, you have folks who really understand and appreciate what it is to live and work in different cultures. And I'm very happy that we can draw on their wisdom as we seek to guide our BridgeUSA participants and advise all of our alumni who are on this call. So to get started, Dustin, I'm going to start with you. How can alumni best present this BridgeUSA experience that they've had in a compelling way on their resume, in LinkedIn, in application materials overall?
Yeah, so I'm always a big advocate of your resume or your LinkedIn or your cover letter, like telling a story of you. I read a lot of resumes and I see a lot of just facts, increase this by this many percent, this many people. Like there's a lot of great facts and metrics, but what I like to see is a sort of story. So if you think about what it is you're looking to do, I work in recruiting in the consulting space. And so, for people who are applying for like a consulting job, it's breaking down what it is you have been doing. So say you've been doing, research and you're a researcher. Well, if you think about consulting, you're going to a client, you're learning what their questions or their problems are. You're gathering a group together, you're researching those problems, you're thinking of a solution, and you're taking it back and presenting it to your client. Now, if you're currently or you have been a researcher, you're thinking about a problem that's out there, you're getting together with a team, you're coming up with solutions, and then you're presenting it to someone. It's very similar if you break it down in that kind of way. So, what I like to see is, regardless of your background, you may not come from exactly the background that you're looking to go to, but do you understand what it is those people are doing? And can you kind of tell the story of how you've been doing something similar? You may not have been doing exactly that, and that's fine. I'm not necessarily looking for people who like have consultant on their resume and have been to
Mhm.
clients, but if I can see some of those aspects, especially if it's telling that story of who you are and like where you've been, where you are now, and where you're wanting to go. And I can kind of see that clear line through there. That's huge. And I think almost everybody can do that with your background and where you want to go. Some of it just may take a little bit more creativity and storytelling to get there.
That's great advice. Shuo, how about you on the World Bank side?
Yeah, I think to a large extent I agree with Dustin. I think nowadays storytelling is key skills, right? No matter is for your application stage or even once you join the company for development related type of works, storytelling is a great skill to have. I think comparing to Accenture, comparing to many private company spaces, the public sector, we are a little bit more conservative, and especially World Bank Group, we are such a technical institution. So for majority of the time, we do judge people or evaluate candidate first based on their technical skills. However, I'm not saying that those amazing international experiences are not relevant for us. I can do tell you that we do our hiring managers read carefully the cover letter, and then they really want to understand, especially at the late selection stage. Once you get into the interviews or the final interviews with the hiring managers, they want to know who you are, right? Maybe these Bridge USA experiences can really link to your motivation to this job or to join IFC, right? Where we are operating internationally and then we send people around the world. So those international experiences is very important. And maybe this Bridge USA experience is your first international experiences or sort of say that plant a seed for you to join a certain position. So I do think that if that can somehow connect to your motivation, can somehow connect to some certain soft skills that you wish to sell or you find it very relevant, then definitely include in the resume, include in the cover letter. And I think, Carmen, you mentioned about LinkedIn. I also agree with Dustin. He mentioned about these, sincereness or about your personal story and etc. I think LinkedIn has a particular function is about writing LinkedIn articles, posts, or maybe it's a blog. Bridge USA is also a very unique experience, I think. It is true nowadays international experience is more accessible. But in my opinion, travel to a foreign country comparing to living in a foreign country for some months or year, it is a totally different story to tell. So if you believe that this particular experiences could be serve as a very important milestone of your life, then maybe drafted a blog to talk about it. Could be also help to build your personal branding on these professional platform.
So the Bridge USA experience can serve both as a way to talk about the skills that you've gained as well as some of those deeper personal factors.
Mhm.
When you all are looking at a resume, sometimes folks are very technical, as Dustin said, and they list all their facts, and sometimes people are very narrative and they just talk deeply about their feelings, right? How do you all like to see a balance between feelings and results? And Dustin, I'm going to start with you again. How can folks best couch this milestone experience, as Shuo called it, within the right context that finds that right thread.
Yeah, I'm a big fan and advocate of a cover letter when you're applying for a job. Um, we at Accenture don't require them. There's only a spot for a resume, so you have to be clever and kind of just upload your own cover letter to that spot. And I think there's a lot of companies out there that make it very easy to skip that part. Um, but for me, that is an opportunity to tell what your resume can't. So the resume does often have a lot more of those facts. Like, what did you do there? You can frame that in kind of a context for the job you're looking for, but it can be tough to really like tell that story and get that narrative out there in a resume because you're just doing bullet points and facts. So I think that there's part in the resume, some people put a little profile or even
Mhm.
like interests or something like that in a resume, which gives you that opportunity. But I think a cover letter where you actually get some space to write a paragraph out there that tells, here's my motivations, here's why I did that. Those kind of things are tough to say in a resume. So I always encourage people, like if I read most of the time, if I read a cover letter along with the resume, I really feel like I got to know the person a
Mhm.
little bit more and not just the employee fact sheet, which a resume can kind of, like you said, Carmen, like it can just be some facts, and that's okay. But I can't encourage you enough. I know it's different in every country, kind of culturally, but at least in the U.S., I think culture cover letters are really key to be able to tell that narrative.
Well, how about on the IGO side?
Same here. Our cover letter is not a mandatory document for the candidate to upload, but definitely recommend not to skip that. It is true, like I said, at the very beginning, the early stage of the recruitment processes, recruiters don't necessarily have the time to read through your cover letter, but really just fact check based on your CV. But once you succeed to advance to the next stage, hiring managers really pay attention to that because they are not only just selecting a technical candidate but also a human being to be part of their team. So indeed, like Dustin mentioned, cover letter can elaborate a little bit to tell your personal story, to have this human being connection with the future hiring team. There are smaller sections like Dustin just mentioned. Maybe it's an interest, maybe it's a small bullet point about international experiences. Maybe on the top, some experienced candidates, they typically create a paragraph, talk about a quick summary of five liners or executive summary, sometimes they call it, and where maybe you can also have a little bit space to highlight what you are looking for.
That's great advice. We know that BridgeUSA experiences build key skills like customer service, detail management, sometimes even financial management if the student is working in an amusement park and they have to handle finance, money and finances and transactions. We also know that it builds adaptability, resilience, cross-cultural communication skills. Are these things that your organizations find valuable? And how can applicants best highlight those things in their resume? It's very easy to say, I am adaptable, but how can they really show that to you, Shuo, when they apply to the IFC?
Yeah. Um, um, like I think, again, because I see World Bank Group very often time the candidate first they join that their first assignment with us probably is based in DC or maybe based in their home country or it could be in a different country. But in the future, many people we are expected to work in a duty location, which is different from our global headquarters, which is different from your home culture or native culture, right? So those experiences, even though it is small, probably can definitely tell the story about adaptability. Sometimes it can also hit the keywords for the technical skills, but mostly really talk about the adaptability. I can tell us a personal story is like, I had last year I had a vacancy within my own team, and that vacancy is to be based in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And we are very open as an international organization. We are very open to explore candidates who have the correct technical skills, but not necessarily, regionally coming from Brazil. So we eventually actually selected a Colombian candidate, and then we sent her to Brazil. And I think one of the things that we noticed during these recruitment processes is in early career, she spent a year in Europe to work. And then the rest of the years, mostly she was working in Colombia. So that actually 1 year limited, working experiences, if comparing to her whole career, it sounds very short, but it still gave us a little bit confidence of, okay, we know that if we send her to an international, a different country, she would be able to adapt. She wouldn't necessarily like, later find difficulties to settle in because she has already gained some experiences of navigating through a career or life in a different country. So yeah, so that's not necessarily a huge experience within her CV, but that's definitely give us a little bit more evidence or fact. Yeah.
That's great to hear. Look, Bridge USA experiences by definition or that short-term
Mhm.
dunk into American life. So that's wonderful. Dustin, how about on the private sector side?
Yeah, I think, having that varied experience among our employees at Accenture is really important. If we went to clients and everyone was, came from the same background, they all had their MBA and they all kind of thought the same, we would bring really one-dimensional solutions for clients that we have. So for us, as a global company, having people who have international experience, whether that is travel or working overseas, that maybe have short-term work experience too, like picking up little skills while they're doing shorter-term jobs. Those are all really valuable assets that then we can take to the client because now you're like a much more well-rounded person that we can that has those experiences that you can share. The other thing I think is to not overlook the whole process. If you think back to like when you first made the decision, like, yeah, I want to do, short-term work in the US and here's Bridge USA. That was probably a long time before the day you first started on your job. And you had applications to fill out, you had deadlines to meet, you had probably in-person appointments to go to the embassy and interviews and everything else. And that was a whole process. And you managed that process. And that is basically, from my perspective, that's somebody who has done some project management. So don't discount the process to like get there. And so don't necessarily start thinking about your Bridge USA experience like day one on the job, because most likely it started 3, 6 months before, a year before of you doing work, maybe while you were also doing another job too, that you were, doing a day job and then at night you were applying for this. So think about some of those skills and things you learned during that process too, because that's also really valuable experience.
I love that. It is absolutely detail management and project management to coordinate visas and fees and sometimes come up with the money to apply and get here, navigating once you land in country to get to your assignment. All of those are highly transferable. And you're right. I think people forget about what personal and professional skills those
Mhm.
are. Are there other things broadly, Dustin,
Mhm.
that you're hiring for, skills and experiences that make a candidate stand out?
Yeah, definitely the technical skills. I've talked a lot about telling the story and unique backgrounds, and that is all important. But kind of like Shuo said, like at the end of the day, we are looking for people who have those technical skills as well. And so, whether that is self-taught, watching YouTube videos, taking classes online, or on the job experience or education, through university or something. But the data analytics skills, being comfortable around AI is certainly a big one for us. It doesn't mean that you are an AI engineer, but you know how to use it and you know how to talk about it. Those are huge skills that, like I said, some can be picked up on the job. I find like AI skills are right still at the point right now where a lot of people don't have a lot of info on their resume necessarily, but having that ability and that comfort is really helpful as well.
Well, how about you at the
Mhm.
IFC?
Yeah. I think if we talk about the soft skills, I just also want to point out to the cross-cultural communication. I gave an example about like, people go on those international assignment or work in a different country. But, for our colleagues who even just based in their own country, their home countries, they are still working with, colleagues coming from different countries and then to work in that location. Okay, so even now today, before I think I was overconfident because I thought, okay, I do speak the three languages fluently. I should be able to manage all the different, cross-cultural communication situations. It is not the truth. It is way much above your language fluency. It is really about how you put shoes in the other people. You understood the deep differences between the two different cultures. Some cultures maybe really appreciate small talks or quick, casual conversations to build that relationship. In my native culture, we are more merit based culture. So we really value technical skills. If you can showcase that you have great technical skills, you can gain confidence from your team. So, but now I'm based in headquarter, in which is a majority a U.S. culture, and then a 10th candidate serve the clients from a Latin American culture, which is relationship based, and then me personally have this mentality of merit based Asian culture. It's very very important for you to really change the chips of yourself very efficiently, and then you really need to understand, okay, because by having yourself living in a foreign country, you can have a better understanding, like, okay, if I'm the minority in this situation, what is my struggle, what is my the challenge that I'm facing. So probably you can always leverage that personal experiences to attend the clients and then to sit in across cultural communication skill situation. In terms of the technical skills in our institution, we really looking for financial modeling. We are looking for people with administration management type of background. I also agree with Dustin. AI is something that also we are encourage our candidate and our staff member to keep learning, because this is gonna really disrupt the future way of work in the future. So yeah, also agree with that point.
Still really great advice. And I have just a couple more and then we'll open the floor up. So folks, feel free to put those in the chat or get your thinking ready. Shuo, you talked a little bit about language skills and all of your wonderful multilingual skills. For those who were non-native English speakers before they came on a Bridge USA program,
Mhm.
is there a good way for them to talk about how their language skills changed? They may not have a formal score or ranking, but their English definitely improved. So are there ways they can describe that experience?
Yeah, of course. In that case, I think they even should consider to have that experience listed as part of their professional experiences. If they even just worked in a not necessarily exactly the same type of industries that they are currently applying for. Still, maybe list that experiences in their professional experience section. And another thing is they can elaborate a little bit more when they talk about their language fluency. Let's say, for example, English. Now you are advanced. or you are fluent, and then you can even mention, lived in the States for how many months or years. So that probably can help the recruiter or the hiring manager to understand to prove a little bit your fluency as well.
Dustin, how about you? Is that something you all would want to see too?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, that is a good, the little section at the bottom or somewhere up at the top that, lived and I think lived and worked in a professional setting for 6 months in, the state of New York or something like that, because that tells me there is a difference, I think, in the
Mhm.
kinds of English you're going to learn in a classroom or just like visiting and hanging out with friends versus professional. You've worked with colleagues and had that kind of that professional experience in English as well, which I think adds a little extra layer that can be good to see.
I thought you were going to make fun of the way people spoke English in New York compared to the
Oh,
Pacific
no, no, no.
Northwest. No, I'm teasing, I'm teasing. For those who may not know, Dustin is on the other side of the country, so they have their own way of speaking and acting. My last question to you all is about relationships and networks. So young folks, in particular, Bridge USA participants, live in working communities. They get to know their employers, their supervisors, their coworkers, others who surround them and welcome them into the United States. What kind of networks can be built, do you think, during a Bridge USA experience? And then how are those relationships helpful for their job search more broadly? And Shuo, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah. I think if we talk about the alumni from the Bridge USA, then obviously, because you have these common experiences, right? So the relationship is there. So similar to any other, alumni relationship that you wish to explore with your university, with your grad schools, etc. I often, for example, I see many candidates. They definitely leverage their alumni network to have these information interview, meaning it is not a selection process, but institutions like our organization, which is massive, and then we are also looking for very, very different type of skill sets, profiles, and etc. So the first thing that you typically want to understand is what is your best fit in these institution, because once you figure out the best fit based on your own profile, you are actually already succeed in the first 20% of your process. So that you can use the best of your skills to compete with the other people. So oftentimes those information can be very well gathered during a information interview with alumni who are willing to share their own experiences with a certain institution. I think if it is and in terms of our institution, in terms of the reference, we do have reference process. We do really encourage our colleague to recommend candidates. So that is definitely also helpful. If someone knows you very well, they are willing to give you a recommendation for a certain process. Yeah, indeed, you definitely should consider that.
And would it also be appropriate to have a letter of recommendation from your supervisor if you were only in a job for 3 or 4 months at an amusement park, at a water park, at a camp? Would those kind of references, if they can really speak to you, also be helpful?
I do think so. In our particular process, we do not look at that until the very late stage. At the hiring stage, we have a official process of doing the reference check. But if we are not talk about IFC or World Bank, in terms of other institutions, if they are willing to look at the recommendation or reference, I do think that is very helpful because if I want to recommend anyone, I'm actually using my personal reputation of doing that, right? That is something very serious. That is something tell the story. So if I'm willing to recommend this person, meaning that this person really is standing out from certain aspects I do believe that is helpful if you wish to collect that before leaving, or when you about to start a selection process. I do recommend you to consider that.
Thank you. Dustin, how about from your side?
Yeah, I think I think taking that opportunity to, wherever you're living, as well, to find, are there local groups that meet and do interesting things. I know, my company here, I'm in Seattle, and my company is part of the Seattle Technology Alliance. It's a bunch of companies that get together and couple times. They have like once a week meetings on different topics. And I've gone to a couple of them over my couple of years. Not a lot of them. I'm not an official member, but my company has kind of this membership that I can go and meet other people who are in a similar field as me. Again, that's kind of rare, and you have to be in the right industry in the right city to find that. But if there are kind of outside of work opportunities to build that network, the other thing I recommend, especially, for a shorter term um, a thing like BridgeUSA, is keep a spreadsheet, or however you like to keep organized, where you can list, like, these are the people that I met, and this was a little brief thing about what we talked about. I met Carmen while I was on this project. Here's a little blurb about where she lives and a couple things to help me remember that conversation. Because as you're going through for a couple of months or 6 months, it may seem like you remember everybody, but when you get back home and it's a year later and you're looking back for those contacts, it can be tricky to remember, wait, who were they all? Did I friend them on LinkedIn? Where can I find them? How can I look them up? But if you have the spreadsheet or a document where you have the name, email, where you met, and just a little one sentence about your interaction, now you can go back when you're, looking at a job later on. You're like, wait, I think Carmen knew something about that. Now I've got Carmen's email, her name, and a little blurb to help me remember that conversation. So however you stay organized, however you take notes best, keep those notes of who you're meeting and how you're interacting, because it'll be really helpful a year down the road when you're going to look for a job. And even if it's not for an official reference, of just sending an email, hey, can we have 10-minute conversation to talk about the work that you do? I know we met last year. We never had that opportunity to dive into talk about your work.
Mm.
And now you've got that opening and that opportunity.
And it's useful on the receiving end too, when you're reminding me how we know each other and how we met. And that's great advice about LinkedIn as well, for your LinkedIn profile, to be sure that you use the tag for your employer, whether it is your amusement park or your internship or traineeship or camp, because then you can find all of the people who also have
Mm.
that tag and are connected in the same space, and it creates that warm relationship that you're both talking about. Well, thanks to you both. We can now open the floor up for questions. And actually, our first one goes back to your points about AI. So, how do each of you feel like AI is changing the hiring landscape, the way resumes and CVs are created, the whole hiring process? And since neither of you are smiling, Dustin, I'm going to start with you, coming from a tech firm. How is AI reshaping this whole hiring process?
Yeah, it really is. I think it's changing it on both ends. I think that it is making it a lot easier for candidates to apply for jobs. There are AI programs and platforms out there that will take over the applying process for you and help you blast out that application to thousands of employers, which makes things easier for you. I think on the employer end, it makes things a little trickier for us. We see a lot more applications, and honestly, a lot more applications that maybe are not qualified, because there's, AI helpers that can send those applications out, and it's less of an effort for an individual person to craft a resume, research the company, send that resume. Um, so with AI, you can do hundreds of applications in a day instead of one or two. Where I think that creates an opportunity as a candidate is, to have that personal touch, that, again, like Shuo was saying, if you have contacts at the company for that referral, those referrals become that much more important because now there's a name of a person attached with this application, that somebody that maybe I know in the company or that someone else knows at the company that's really helpful. Um, I do think though that on the candidate front, when you're applying, AI has also just made it a lot easier for you to organize your thoughts. You know, we talked about
Mhm.
cover letters. I'm a big advocate that if you do a cover letter, it should be personal. I know there's a lot of programs out there that will write the cover letter based on the job description, but that cover letter is your opportunity to tell a story. But that doesn't mean you need to write every word yourself. You know, put your story into AI and ask it to help you format it like a cover
Mhm.
letter. And then it's still your ideas, it's still your thoughts. It's just you're getting that extra help with formatting and grammar and all of that. So I encourage you, use AI in the process of researching companies as well. That put that in and say, hey, I want to apply for Accenture. Tell me all the history, the things I need to know, where, here's my background, where might my skills land me? And now you go into that interview and you understand the company, you understand where your skills might fit within that company. So that's on the candidate front. I think on the hiring front, it is changing things a lot as well. At Accenture, I'm kind of surprised, but right now it's still a much more manual process. That is going to be changing in the coming months as we do roll out more AI programs and software into the process. For those of you who have applied for jobs in the last 6 months or year, more and more companies are using this, that instead of going to a website and attaching your resume and filling out fields, a lot of times you're just texting back and forth with a chat bot that is
Mhm.
building your application for that company on the back end. So things are changing rapidly, but I think my takeaway from it is that it does create more need for that personal connection, but also more opportunity for that personal connection. As a lot of the other people you're competing against for that job may be relying more heavily on AI than you. So reach out to people, utilize your networks, and try to make things personal where you can.
That also speaks to me about the professionalism skills that are built
Mhm.
during a BridgeUSA experience. Because if you're texting with a chatbot, you may be tempted to be much more casual than you should be in a normal interview and application process. So, how about you on the IFC side? Is AI involved?
I think I'm glad to hear that, Dustin, we are not really behind you. So I can share that our process is quite manual still. We are not yet using AI, but I'm sure this will change in the future. The reason is we also want to be very inclusive for our application processes. So I can tell you that at least until today, we are still reading every single application by ourselves, by a human. But I fully agree with Dustin. Is you should definitely, as a candidate, you should leverage the efficiency of AI, which meaning that deep research of a company, right? Summarize some of key reports like World Bank. We are really good at making publications reports. There are tons of them that you can easily read, and then now with leveraging with AI, you can quickly go through those summaries and etc. Right? If you are non-native English speaker, now with the AI, you can easily help to proofreading, to correct the formatting, like Dustin mentioned. I also fully agree with him. Nowadays, with AI, people, I think nowadays sort of like have an idea about, or people would start to be very careful. If even, when you look at the social medias and you say, oh, this photo is actually an AI created photo, right? People start to question about the content creation made by AI. So the same thing. The advantages of human touch comparing to AI is this human touch. So we, as a recruiter, if we read through some applications or a cover letter, we can tell if this is like a copy paste from AI, or it is really like a personal story or that has some personal touch. So this is from the side that you prepare your application. On the selection side, like I said, even though we are still reading through the applications like with a real human recruiter, but we are prepared for written assessment. Given that our institution is a technical institution, so we do have typically for junior level positions there is a written assessment involved. And so we are trying to monitoring the AI usage, the proctoring, etc. We wouldn't necessarily eliminate people if we find out that they are using AI, but we definitely want to understand that whole answer to that question is not a simple copy paste in the AI. How let the AI to answer it. So this is the things that we are trying to understand in the selection process.
I love that. We talk so much about how BridgeUSA is not just a work experience. It's really about that cross-cultural relationship element that people are exposed to. And that really seems to be at the heart of both of your answers, that you can use the tool, but it really is about the human piece that is so revealed during these BridgeUSA experiences that helps a candidate stand out. We're almost at time, friends. So if there are other questions, I see again a couple more that came in, a lot of them related to what we've talked about in terms of skill development, professionalism, customer service, resilience, cross-cultural communication. Uh, with that, for both of you, are there any other closing advice that you have for our alumni and for our colleagues on the line who support participants in alum about how they can really use their time on BridgeUSA, 3 months, 12 months, 18 months, 5 years, as part of their whole professional journey and really one more stop on their growth as professionals? Shuo, any advice that you have?
Yeah, I think myself coming from a non-native English speaker, and my current where I'm from Asia, China, and then where I'm currently standing, I think my whole international career started with short-term international experiences as well. So my first international experiences was a 2-week school visit to Finland. That was my first foreign country experience. And then later another 2 weeks in the States. That's also another sister high school of my high school back in Beijing. So that, really opened my horizon, my doors, my eyes. And then that's probably the main reason I choose to major in foreign languages. And that's where the story, begins. So I hope many of you can, if this is gonna be your only international experiences, definitely leverage that for your job hunting exercise. And I'm sure for many of you, this is probably just a start. So you never know. Maybe by having this first experiences, you're gonna have the second and then the third, and eventually have an international career. So good luck for all of you.
I think many people would be very excited to have their bio also say lived in Bogota, and Beijing, and Quito, and Madrid, and all those places. Dustin, how about you? Any advice?
Yeah, I think I think it sounds kind of cliche, but especially for a short-term program, just make sure that you're using every day to further that your network and your professional development. I think, especially with shorter term programs, and this is just also me personally, when something is shorter term, it feels like it starts and it finishes so quickly. And oftentimes at the end, you're just thinking, wow, that all just like passed by in the blink of an eye, and I didn't get the opportunity to do this, this, and this. So for those of you like at the beginning or heading into it, or even hosting, to just really encourage people to build those networks. If you're keeping that spreadsheet that I mentioned, where you're adding people to it, set a goal that every week I want to add 5 people to my spreadsheet list and ask them interesting questions about their job or their career path. Those little conversations can open up so many doors. That conversation we just asked them about somebody's job, and then they ask you about your interests, and then they say, oh wait, actually, what I'm interested in and what you're interested in, like they can mesh together, and that can open those little opportunities. So don't let your short-term experience like pass you by and think back to regrets, especially on the professional front. Um, I know networking and meeting people, especially in if there's language barriers or cultural differences, can be really difficult. But as somebody who's on the other end of that, that gets occasionally, coffee chat, emails or something asking to chat for a few minutes, those can be fun conversations for me too, to get to learn about somebody else, learn about their culture, their background. So don't feel like you're burdening people by reaching out. That said, if you reach out and they don't respond after one or two times, maybe they're just busy and move on. Um, but but people enjoy having those connections and conversations, and so take advantage of that opportunity.
I love that. A wonderful note to end on is leading and embracing curiosity. I love it. So thank you both so much for being part of our conversation today. Thank you to all of our attendees. As I said, Capital members, you'll see the summary and all of our other content soon. If you're not part of the Capital family yet, please come on in. We love having alumni and agents and sponsors and hosts and everyone all part of our conversations to really make the space stronger and ever moving forward. Thanks to everyone. Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Shuo. And have a great rest of your day, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.